There's one fella that is in the center of a lot of the conversation. And I've looked at some of his stuff and it's interesting. But he posted something yesterday or today. He said, my ex-wife allegedly, in all caps, because that seems to be the going word to put on the UFO conversation these days. My ex-wife allegedly uh, was in church and saw a an ET that she recognized as an ET that had the appearance of a human. And he telepathically communicated to her, yes, I know you can see me, and there's nothing you can do about it. And apparently he saw his wife pale and she was fear-filled. So that was the posting. And so I thought, well, now that's interesting. Let's see what people have to say about that, because that's where you can really start to see how many different lenses people are going to look at something like that through. And oy vey. There's some that wanted more information, some that totally reacted from fear, some that said, it was absolutely the devil. Another fellow jumped in and said, well, if the devil really wants to manipulate people, what would better way would be to create a religion that kept you in a box. So maybe that's the devil. I thought, well, okay, that's taken from looking at it from another point of view. And uh, somebody else, um, somebody else said, what's the big deal? And then he comes back in and says, well, another part of the story is that then she saw this entity go into the preacher, and then the preacher started talking about giving money to the church. So I thought, well, okay, so now you can't, this whole little snippet, this one little snippet incident, alleged incident, created this entire teeny universe of different perspectives and interpretations. And then I started thinking about it. And I said, okay, what if it were true? So what if she were sitting in a church? And so what if she saw a being? And what if he telepathically said to her, yes, I'm here and there's nothing you could do about it? So what if that were true? And what's the big deal? You work with what is, period. So you look at a child, and the child looks at the parent and wants something, and the parent says, I'm here and there's nothing you can do about it. I've got the control. You cannot have the Snickers bar. So the child goes into a tantrum, fights against it, or says okay, or negotiates when they can have the Snickers bar, depending. But it is what it is, and that's life here on planet Earth. So, okay, let's say that's the case. Then the question becomes, what do you do about it? So I started to think, okay, what would I do? And this is all playing in your own mind, and you don't know what you will do if it actually happened. But I would say it would be a very good exercise to play in your mind. What if that's the case? Now, to automatically assume that it is evil because it is different, I think that is inherently wrong. Because my sense is that there's so many different races of extraterrestrial beings that have walked amongst us before we even became Homo sapiens sapiens. Then you don't go into a panic. You just kind of have to accept that we're not top dog on the whole totem pole like we've been taught, and like a lot of people like to think we are. We're not top dog, period. We're babies. We're babies in the whole evolutionary scale. Where, in the words of my mother, when I told her that I was going to Barcelona to hear Christopher Mellon, who's the retired Undersecretary of Defense, speak on some of the things that he's trying to do to move the conversation forward. And my mother, who is a Southern woman, who said, I've always thought that we aren't alone in the universe. And I said, really? Because this isn't something that we'd ever really talked about. So, really? And she said, well, yeah, just think about it. If humanity is the best that God can do, well, that's not that much of a God, is it? He's done more. I just started to laugh and I go, yeah, okay, that's one way to look at it. God love her. And, I'm inclined to agree, even if I didn't have memories from before I was born. Even if I didn't remember why I was here on Earth and how I was here to assist humanity in its ascension and remembering infinite unconditional love. Even if I hadn't had experiences with other sentient beings as I was growing up, I would I would have to take my mother's stance of if humanity is the best that God can do, that's just not much of a God. So back to this. So they've been around. So let's just work off of that premise for a moment. So rather than go into fear, it really would behoove you to take a moment to stop, look, let, love moment. Just stop. Look at what you're feeling. Let it go for a moment. Let love flow up through it and ask for illumination. Because there might be some beings that don't really hold humanity in that high of esteem. Because we're not that high on the totem pole. We might be like monkeys to them from their perception. And there's some humans that really respect what monkeys have to communicate and other humans that don't. So we could probably work off the premise that there might be a race of beings that see us as monkeys and have respect for us, and some within that race that don't have respect for us. But then we also instinctively know in our bones that there are also a vast array of other intelligent species, if we really felt into it, that want humanity to ascend, that want humanity because they are more evolved and they do understand infinite unconditional love. And they do understand that we are all in this together. And they do understand on a cellular, on a basic, even the ones that don't need bodies, on an inherent level, they understand in a very practical, concrete way that there is only one consciousness of the all, of God, of Allah, whatever you want to call it. That if all things came from a divine light source, then we are just individuations of that greater whole. So before you go into panic, and especially as this disclosure of it is going to unfold, because there are more and more people wanting to, even if the government is trying to backtrack on the disclosure that it did in May of 2022, because they don't want to let go of the power game. And I say they, and I'm grouping them together. There's a lot of different little pockets there, and that's a different conversation for a different day. But as this disclosure unfolds, it's really going to take that personal courage to feel into and not knee-jerk reaction what you see and what's revealed, because more and more is going to be revealed. And there was another fella that I actually spoke to, and he made me laugh, where he said, yeah, I want disclosure. I want to know the truth. I want to know this. He was a big cheerleader. And I said, well, hey, I just did, that CE5 contact weekend. You want to do a CE5 together?" And it's like, and his answer was, "Well, no, 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 no. I want disclosure, but I'm not ready to do that." And the CE5 contact is to make direct contact. So he wants disclosure, but he's not ready for the direct contact. Okay. And he made me laugh, and I sent him tons of love. And I said, "Yeah, I get that. I get that. And it's really important. And this is really an important principle of working with light and learning to love yourself and working with your own growth. You need to work from where you really are and not from where you'd like to think you are. If you try to do light work, or you try to operate in anything from where you'd like to think you are, without having that recognition of where you really are, then you're going to create a little bit, your co-creation is going to get a little sloppy, because you're not working from a real clean center to circumference space. Well, I remember once I had just read a letter, an email from a friend of mine who had forwarded a letter. Some fellow had an experience behind the scenes with an Egyptian tomb where he had felt this presence appear, and then it actually appeared in front of him, and there was a communication. As I was reading the communication, I could feel the goosebumps running through me. I could feel this whole message running through me. It's like my hair was standing on end as I'm reading this email. And then I feel this presence in my apartment. And I look over and I see this shimmering form take shape. And I looked and I was very calm, but I put my hand up and I said, "No." I said, "I'm not quite ready for that, but thank you." And then it receded. It went away. So what was that? There's all sorts of hypotheses that you could put to it. I take it into meditation, but basically the reason I'm sharing that is because it's important to recognize our own sovereignty. And we have our own sovereignty. And part of this whole cosmic protection that humanity has, and it's not talked about a lot, and I want you to really feel into to see if this resonates. Other species cannot harm us directly. They can come in on our fear, because the fear is the invitation. We open ourselves up and we allow ourselves to hook into them, and they hook into us. That's what fear does energetically. It hooks in and hooks back. And you feed on each other. Okay? But if you don't fall into the fear and you're emanating love and light, they can't hook into you. Alchemically and energetically, vibrationally, that's just how it is. And if you really want to see how that can really play out on a lot of different levels, go pick up my book, Waymakers. It's a fiction, and go straight to the final chapter, because that's where everything comes together. And there's the clash in the cosmos with all of the different characters, and they're all at different levels energetically. But if you've got somebody, and then I'll bring this down to a very practical thing. If you've got somebody that is angry with you and they're throwing their anger at you, and you defend back, now you're hooking. Now you're hooking and you're feeding off of each other. Okay. But if you just stop and rest in your light, and you emanate light, even if you want to do the divine in me sees and greets the divine in you from here, or background thoughts as you're listening to that person, and you stay in neutral, that negative or that gobbler energy will get weaker and weaker and weaker and weaker, and then finally die down, and the love that you're emanating will win. And then once that love that you're emanating and that anger has died down, then you can have a dance. So it's not a hook, but it's a give and take exchange. Okay, so that's a little example of how the love and the light will always win. So back to the ET and that whole moment in the church. Play out different scenarios. Take it into meditation and play out different scenarios of what would you do in that situation. And that gives you the chance to see exactly where are you in your fear levels on subconscious levels, your fear levels, your curiosity levels. You could try out different scenarios. And it's a way of allowing yourself to get comfortable and get accustomed to um, handling a brand new situation that is going to come sooner or later. And the nice thing is that it gives you a chance to understand how you handle the unknown. And you'll use that with even the little everyday unknowns that'll come up with you along the way. So those are just some thoughts to ponder. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you so much for being interested in learning on how to live your light more fully and freely with emotional freedoms that you haven't even yet begun to dream of, and that gives you the courage and clarity to live your divine soul purpose. Now, just so that I play well with the algorithms here on YouTube, be sure to like the video. Please leave me a comment because I do love more two-way conversations, and subscribe if you want to stay in touch with any of the new material that I'm putting out there.